My beloved students, now I am going to give you a lesson on the factors that control conditioning. There are certain factors that control classical conditioning. One, motivation. Inner motives play a very important role in classical conditioning. Pavlov uses a dog in his experiment. This dog is extremely hungry, very, very hungry. It needs food. It wants food to satisfy its hunger. It's the hunger motive which makes the dog salivate at the sight of the food, the meat. Suppose the dog is not hungry, its stomach is full. What will happen? You just imagine. Will it salivate at the sight of the food, at the sight of the meat? It may not. Why? It's not motivated. No motivation on the part of the dog. Its stomach is full. It needs no food. Here is another stimulus, the conditioned stimulus. It cannot make the dog salivate. It cannot evoke the response of salivation from the dog. It may elicit some other response. For example, the response of fear. Then what happens? What does the dog learn? The dog learns not the habit of salivation, but the habit of fear reaction. 2, the order of presenting the stimuli. In the experiment, Pavlov uses 2 stimuli, the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus. You know the nature of the unconditioned stimulus. It's natural. It's powerful. Here, the meat is the unconditioned stimulus. As far as a hungry dog is concerned, it's an unconditioned stimulus. This meat can make the dog salivate. As far as a dog is concerned, the response of salivation is inborn, innate, involuntary. Now I remember another example, tamarind. When we hear the very word tamarind, there will be salivation in our mouth. This response is inborn, innate, involuntary. Then, here is another stimulus, the conditioned stimulus. The conditioned stimulus cannot make the dog salivate before conditioning. In this experiment, this conditioned stimulus is presented first. Then, the unconditioned stimulus is presented. Then what happens? This is repeated many times. After certain repetitions, there will be an association between the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus. In order to have this association, there must be some order of presenting the stimuli. An order has to be followed. Otherwise, there will be no association between the conditioned stimulus and this unconditioned stimulus. According to Pavlov, there are 4 possibilities. 1. Delayed conditioning. In delayed conditioning, the conditioned stimulus is presented first, then the unconditioned stimulus. One thing has to be noted. The ending of this conditioned stimulus takes place only after the unconditioned stimulus is presented. But the conditioned stimulus ends before the unconditioned stimulus ends. 2. Simultaneous conditioning. As the name implies, here these 2 stimuli, the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus, are presented together at the same time, simultaneously. In trace conditioning, first the conditioned stimulus is presented, then the unconditioned stimulus. But one thing is to be noted here. Only after the ending of the conditioned stimulus, this unconditioned stimulus is presented. In backward conditioning, as the name implies, the order of presenting the stimuli is just the reverse. In other words, first the unconditioned stimulus, then the conditioned stimulus. It said, delayed conditioning is the best one. The timing of the stimuli. We know there are 2 stimuli, the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus. What about the time gap interval between these 2? The time interval between these 2 should not be too long. If it's too long, what will happen? The dog fails to see the association between the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus. Then there will be no conditioning. The best time interval is 2 to 6 seconds with the new stimulus given first. Reinforcement. We know in this experiment, the conditioned stimulus is followed by the unconditioned stimulus. This is repeated many times. After many repetitions, there will be an association between the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus. As a result of this, there will be a bond between the conditioned stimulus and the conditioned response. In other words, the dog is conditioned to the conditioned stimulus. In other words, the conditioned stimulus evokes the response of the unconditioned stimulus. Here, the response of the meat. Suppose the ring of the bell is not followed by the meat. Only the ringing of the bell, only the sound of the bell, no food. Only the ringing of the bell, only the sound of the bell, no food, no food. Only the sound of the bell, no food. Only the sound of the bell, no food. Then what happens? After certain repetitions, the bond between the conditioned stimulus and the conditioned response gets weakened. This bond will be inhibited. This is called extinction. Extinction. That means the bond is not seen. But a spontaneous recovery of this bond is possible. What should be done? If this conditioned stimulus, if the sound of the bell is followed by the meat, one so twice, what will happen? This bond appears again. Distracting stimuli. We know this experiment is conducted in a lab which is free from all distracting stimuli, external disturbances. Only the dog in the lab. Then Pavlov views all the things in the lab by using a set of mirrors. He uses two stimuli, the CS and the VS, the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus. Suppose if there's another stimulus, another irrelevant stimulus, what will happen? The dog can never find the relation between the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned response. Then everything is gone, everything collapses. There will be no bond between CS and CR. There will be no conditioning. Some other things will take place. In this situation, before I conclude my lesson, I would like to say something. I got a friend. His name is Anish. He sees a very beautiful woman in a green sari every day. He sees her in the same sari every day. When he sees the beautiful woman for the first time, there will be some response on his part. One day, he goes home. He sees the same green sari in a shop. This green sari evokes the response of that beautiful woman. Very simple. First, this beautiful woman evokes some response from my friend. The same response evoked by the green sari which we see in a shop. This is classical conditioning. Thank you.